All right, I got a pretty good break off at 6, hitting the road at 6:10. That's a good time for me. Be at the shop by probably like 6:30. This could be a long video. I'll try to make it as efficient as possible because I got like 3 topics to cover. First order of business, my country, my people. Jamaica, of course, we got hit by Melissa like a day or two ago. A lot of devastation. Surprisingly, a lot of the videos that I've seen have been pretty upbeat. You know, it's kind of made its way like up and away through the Caribbean Sea, and then up the Atlantic. So basically, like Jamaica got like the Category 5, and then obviously it kind of like loses power as it goes up through Cuba, and then veers off into the Atlantic just off the coast of Florida, and then out to Bermuda. And for those of you who need like a geography lesson, Bermuda is like is further out into the Atlantic Ocean than it appears on a map. You probably have just become acquainted with that this week. But of course, prayers up. When I get paid, I'll donate. Even though everyone's saying like don't donate to the Red Cross and do some grassroots, whatever. I mean, all I know is that the American Red Cross is pretty reputable. I'll talk to my church. We usually have some kind of like a direct pipeline, either through the AMR or through another, I don't know, United Way. Does United Way do that? Some other big organization. Of course, a lot of those charities, sometimes the donations, a good portion is eaten up by admin fees. But I mean, I feel like that's anywhere, right? The staff has to be paid. But the big thing is to donate, pray, whatever you can. I would say time, but like I don't think anyone who's not already on the island is going to be there anytime soon. I feel for him. I lost contact with some of my family there, but my cousin, who's like kind of like the main conduit to our family there, he'll certainly let us know. I was supposed to appear on the Susan show actually via Zoom this week, but obviously Hurricane Melissa and all that's been preempted. Totally understandable, but that's pretty well underway. I've sent some childhood photos to the producers there, so I'm feeling pretty good about it in terms of like reconnecting with my father and stuff. I mean, you know me, hope springs eternal. That'll probably be the theme in a sense of this video. I'll probably go with like life comes at you fast, which I feel like I've used some variation of that title a bunch of times over the 13 years that I've been doing this. All right, so second order of business, it's about to become a national story. So I don't know if you heard it here first, but you heard it here early. I won't say his name, even though it's like all in the paper, very easy to find. I went to high school and college with this gentleman. We're the same age. Like he graduated, I think he was like class of 98 or 99, but I'm really only, I don't know, maybe like 7 months older than him. I graduated in 97. So in other words, we're the same age. Like I just turned 46 last month. He's 45, but he'll be clicking over pretty soon. But bright enough young man. He's like one of those people that I was just talking to a close friend of mine. You know how some people, they just kind of like, to use a football analogy, I love my sports analogies. I kind of filter the world through basketball primarily, but really any sport. Some people just kind of huddle around the line of scrimmage, if you will, and they become successful that way. And I know quite a few people who've done really well. You don't necessarily need to be the brightest bulb on the shelf, but if you're earnest, hard enough working, and you just get enough face time, and you know the right people, people will put you on. And that's kind of what happened. He ended up, you've probably heard of Maura Healey. She's our very much I don't want to say alternative lifestyle, because I don't know if being a lesbian these days is really alternative lifestyle. You probably think more of like transgender or something like that. And I have no issue with any of it per se. So Maura Healey, she's openly gay woman, or lesbian woman. I guess gay would be a man, right? Harvard educated. I think she used to play basketball, like all the Massachusetts things, and really bright. And she stands up to Trump. You'll see Trump like they don't call it tweets anymore, but like X or on his Truth Social platform, Grift, where he'll just go at her and say how stupid she is. And you know, the mayor of Boston, why does her name escape me now? You know, the Asian lady. Damn, I was just saying her name just a moment ago, like before I turned the camera on. But anyway, they're pretty prominent because A, it's Massachusetts, right? So it's not a flyover state. Much of the country gets their politics from the great state of Massachusetts, my favorite state, my home state. And so we're a target. And of course, New England in general is kind of like its own country in a lot of ways. So a lot of the nuttery that's happening throughout the country, like the right-wing nuttery, isn't really touching here. I'm surprised he hasn't tried to send like the National Guard into like, and you know, more broadly the Northeast. But you know, Pennsylvania is kind of weird. It's like it's a swing state, and Fetterman's proven to be, you know, kind of not the leftiest of left, but that's like a whole other thing. But anyway, it's a scandal. They caught my man with 3 drops, but the latest was like 8 kilos. So, you know, I'm not up on my you know, drug or street vernacular per se, at least not anymore. Not that I ever dealt, but like, you know, I had my late uncle, who passed 10 years ago, was a fairly prominent drug dealer in his own right when we were growing up in Dorchester, you know, in South Boston. As a matter of fact, that's why he fled to Florida. And I think I've told you that story before, how he left a bunch of dope with my mom, and she was inquisitive enough to check and basically dump it before, like, as he fled. And then the cops come busting down our door, and you know, this is like Reagan era, right? So this is 1988. Had they caught my mom with that, I would have no mom. So you know, I kind of grew up around it. It's not like I'm like, you know, wet behind the ears about that, but you know, I don't know the street value of like 8, you know, a brick basically, like, you know, 8 kilos of cocaine. And I looked it up, and it's like between, like, depending on how it's divided and what it's turned into, you know, whether it's like pure or, you know, blue magic, like American Gangster, or crack or whatever. I guess it's between like anywhere from $70,000 to like basically $250,000. So it's like, that's like real weight. And I guess it was the 3rd drop. They've caught essentially a total of about 21, 22 kilos. So, you know, roughly like 45 pounds or so. So this is like real weight. Obviously, you're not snorting that or smoking that yourself. You're distributing at that point. So, and you know how the, you know, state cases or Fed cases are. They only bring the case if they think they're going to win. So it's not looking good, but it also, like, I knew him to be bright enough to where it feels like a setup. Like I didn't think he was necessarily like a rocket scientist, but you know, I've had many conversations with him. And when I say like a buddy, I don't mean like just a casual friend. Like, we literally just spoke on Monday, and you know, life comes at you fast, man. Like, had you told me that on Monday, it's like the furthest thing from my mind. Now, there was a pending investigation, and apparently they'd caught, I mean, the story's still developing, but it sounds almost like they'd caught 2 other drops. And it's crazy because, you know, he was the deputy director for, you know, the governor, basically for like the Western Mass contingent. So I'm assuming she has like 3 deputy directors, maybe like Central Mass, and then, well, she's the governor of Massachusetts out of Boston, so it probably wouldn't make sense that there's an Eastern Mass deputy director. But in any event, man, he's been plastered all over the news and on Mass Live, which is like kind of like our local, like Massachusetts centered, like politics, local goings on, whatever. And you can already see the slant. Like, you had this one journalist who had like basically like 4 separate pieces on this, and you know, you can see that he was like arraigned and everything. I guess the hearing, and it will be tomorrow, the initial hearing, and you know, bond was set pretty low, so a lot of people are outraged about it. Obviously, it's along racial lines, so he's black. So I'm just reading like all the comments in Facebook and Mass Live, and they're like, oh, I bet you, like, you know, he was like supplying like, you know, the Bidens, and I knew Maura Healey was into some stuff, and yada yada yada, like just crazy stuff. Obviously, you know, it was a hire. You screen to the best of your ability, but you don't necessarily know what your employees are going to do. And I'm still like you know, innocent until proven guilty type of guy. Again, the brick was like mailed to his place of work. You know, he was like a hotel manager as well, and it was like mailed right to, like, very like the wrong place to send it. Like there's got to be other channels that you can use to traffic it if that's what you're doing. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. This is someone I've known for 32 years. Like I knew him like before high school. So Springfield, we have like these jobs in the summer. I don't know if they do them anymore, but back when I was a youth, this is back when I was like 14, we had jobs for like underprivileged kids. Like, if you're coming from a household that made a certain amount or whatever. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure if he was around his mom. I know his mom. I don't know that I've ever seen his pop. So I don't know if he was like a single parent household or one of those like kind of like, co-parenting type households. But in any event, clearly he qualified because we were both there. I knew I was poor. So he must have been similarly poor as well. And in recent years, he's kind of built himself up as like a bit of like a local politician. And in any event, yeah, so they nabbed him for trafficking. We'll see what comes of it. I hope the best for him. That's real weight. And there was a, he doesn't have a license to carry, and they found a gun, in his possession or whatever. So I think that's like 3 to 5 automatically in Massachusetts if you don't have a license to carry. Of course, I got my license to carry last summer. I don't own a gun yet, though. So this is like all kinds of crazy. And they also found some cash and stuff. And, that's coming on. He had a pretty nice 6-figure job. It's not like he was making like $300,000, but I think they published it. It was like 120 or so, I think. And he was like, he still kind of had his old job as like a hotel manager. So I'm assuming like his maybe total compensation was maybe like approaching 200 or something. Certainly enough. He always has like some fresh gear, he and his kids or whatever. So, he was doing all right. Greed's a hell of a thing. I don't know if it's like let me put my friends on type of thing. Like, the gambling in the NBA right now, you got guys with like $25 million contracts and getting caught up in, so far they're saying it's like a kind of a mafia ring that was like, they're totaling at about like $7 million, which by NBA standards is relative chump change. So, never underestimate the stupidity of people, but I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. So the other part, so that's that. I mean, you can easily read up on it. Just, I'm not going to say his name, even though his name is out there. Again, this is somebody I could text right now. Well, I mean, he's probably in a holding cell right now, but like I could text him at any time. I could, see him at any time. This is like a real friend. Again, I've known him since '94, and we went to high school and college together. Crazy, man. Like, other things I want to say, but you get the idea. So then the other part is, my, melodrama of the last 3 years. Wow, time has flown by. This is the reason why I don't necessarily believe in high horses, because again, life comes at you fast. Sometimes when you're in something, you can't really see it, but you step back from it and you realize just how similarly, whether it's like, you're depraved, downtrodden, lucky, whatever, how similar you are to other people. So as you know, approaching 3 years now, February 3 years, aside from like a minor, possibly drunken blip, where I spoke to my former best friend, but February essentially would be 3 years since we spoke. Next month will be 3 years since my ex broke things off. So crazy parallel, without saying too much. If I know him the way I know him, which I know him exceedingly well, he's probably listening to this. And we've had a discussion. I don't doubt that his situation played into why we no longer speak, whatever. Obviously still got love for him, whatever, I understand. And there's some other subtext going on, but I won't get into his business. But what I can say, as it like edifies the story and gives you an idea of what I'm talking about, the lines along which he lost his ex, and which is boiled or devolved into, depends on how you want to look at it, a full-on nightmare. Just picture losing the love of your life, and then she moves on, and then you can use your imagination and imagine what happens from there if she finds someone. And his situation is in full like fruition, if you want to call it that, and mine is heading that way, though I don't know, but it's entirely possible. So today's her birthday. A milestone. I won't say the age, but you can guess, given what you know how old I am, so you can kind of guess what she is. I think about her all the time. First thing I think about in the morning, last thing I think about before I go to bed. Still pray for her, all that, everything. But you know me, I'm just a forever like hopeful guy. I have, in a lot of ways, like I practice my brand of Christianity casually in a lot of ways. You know, I watch every Sunday. I don't really attend. I do go to the night watch service on New Year's Eve, but for a bunch of reasons. I mean, I have a sore throat right now, and I've noticed since COVID that I get kind of sick around people. Those are like excuses. Like I could go even if I just put a mask on for a couple hours. I just don't because, like, you know, I'm busy. Had law school going on, and a bunch of other things. Like Sunday's my rest day. I work, you know, 50 hours a week, etc., etc. But, you know, the more I think about it, so his situation was more of like a very pointed decision. Probably should have went right when he went left, or vice versa. Probably should have gone left and he went right, whichever way you want to go. In a lot of ways, I respect it, right? So even though the after effect sucks, right? When you make the wrong decision, or, you know, it depends on how you want to look at it. It's a subjective thing, but in this case, it turned out to be kind of like the wrong decision, tactically, not necessarily morally, but tactically, I guess I'll say. I always say, you know, at least you got your money's worth, right? Like, the buck stopped with you, whether you made the right call or good, bad, or indifferent, and then, you know, the other person counters. That's the thing, right? So much like a boxing match or an MMA match, right? If you don't knock the situation out, and I guess knockout would be like definitively conquer the situation, whether she's just super heads over heels with you and she'll just, you know, loves your dirty bathwater and she'll just tolerate whatever your decision is, even if she's unhappy, and just stay, or whether you just are straight aces and you totally satisfied her and then you ride off into the sunset. Short of that situation, if you make a decision and, like, you know, she counters and she makes her, you know, makes her decision in response to yours, and it doesn't work out for you, at least you can say, all right, it was my call, you know, I rolled the dice and lost, whatever analogy you want to put to it. On a certain level, you got to respect that, right? Because at least the final call, it's like akin to, like, you're entrusted with the final shot. Maybe it was a shitty shot. Maybe it was like a follow away 30-footer that was like not the most open. A guy flew by and contested. Whether it's that or it's a wide open 15-footer. Say you miss both. Obviously, the 15-footer will probably keep you up late. Famously, Larry Bird missed a pretty wide open, like, 18-footer baseline in the 1987 NBA Finals. I think it was like game 5 or 6. It was the game with the junior skyhook, the junior skyhook by Magic Johnson. So I think it was game 5. It wasn't the closeout game. They ended up losing in 6. But had they won that game, it might even been 4. So it was either the Celtics fell behind 3-1 or fell behind 3-1 or fell behind 3-2. But in any event, he missed it. It was like on the left baseline. It was like right in front of the Lakers bench. And then he turns around to Pat Riley and he's like, how the hell did I just miss that shot? He's Larry Bird, one of my 3 favorite players. Larry Bird, Paul Pierce, LeBron James. And I'm sure that keeps him up at night, especially that level of shooter, right? But at the end of the day, you got an open shot, you got the final call, you know, you ride with that, win, lose, or draw. And, you know, in a sense, I wouldn't say high horse is the right word, but I took solace in the sense that, like, you know, I gave it my best shot. There's nothing I could sink my teeth into in terms of, like, why the relationship failed. It was just like, you know, in so many words, she just wanted a better man, ostensibly. It wasn't like you know, holding a moral dilemma over a barrel, like, you know, my best friend's situation where it's like I drew a line in the sand and I just wouldn't do this or whatever. It wasn't any of that. It wasn't like dragging my feet necessarily or anything like that. It was just, to be honest with you, I'm still not entirely sure of the reasons. I mean, I know she abhorred or detested YouTube and I wouldn't give it up, but it wasn't just this. It was like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Obviously, in the afterglow, the more I look back at it, I'm like, damn. As much as I enjoy this, and obviously I do this very sporadically, I don't do it as often as I used to, in a huge part because of that, for a variety of reasons. You can think of it backward and forward as to why a huge contributing factor of why you lost the love of your life, why you wouldn't necessarily want to indulge in it as much in the afterglow, even when, you know, the damage is done, right? It's not like it can get any worse, you know, she's gone. But, you know, there's that. And, obviously, that was a huge driving force in me going to law school, even though I always wanted a JD. The irony is, as of right now, I'm not in law school. I do think I will be back either next year or the year after. My mom is not impressed, and I have a couple friends that are not with it, but I've learned, I'm someone who leans heavily on like consensus and like analytics and statistics like around me, whether by the seat of the pants, colloquially or like or officially. And I do remember too with the show kind of asking around, and like some of my friends like, oh, you got to make your own call, don't let her force you into da whatever. And in a lot of ways those people are like long gone as far as that is. And as a matter of fact, some of them are like, well, you probably should have gave it up. And I'm like, wait a minute, you said something else. And some of the same people with like past situations, I won't go into it too deep, where I kind of gave them a vote on a girl that I was like on the fence about, and they kind of voted thumbs down. I went with it because like that was like the consensus or whatever, and then afterwards they're like more or less like, what are you listening to me for? So that's probably an important lesson in and of itself. And of course, famously to me, my mom and aunt, they threw salt in the situation, by refusing to break bread with the other parental unit. Like, a no-no. That wasn't even like a second guess. That was like a first guess. I knew that was bad. But, again, with the boxing analogy, unless you knock this situation out, when you have things go to the scorecards, to the judges, you don't know what they're going to say. You might think you know what they're going to say. You might think they're very smart, cogent, bright, moral people or whatever around you, but you really don't know what people are going to do when the time comes for them to make a decision. Whether they're giving you like good or bad counsel, or if they like literally have sway in a situation and like how they're going to vote. So you're probably wondering like, all right, so what are you rambling about? I think you kind of get the idea, right? But as disparate as I thought my former best friend, I still call him my best friend. Again, that's my brother, regardless, whether we never speak again or whatever. I looked at his situation like, damn, you kind of made like the wrong decision, and it ended up how it ended up. And not at all, obviously, I feel for him, because as bad as my situation is, even though it seems to be heading that way, right? That's like the logical conclusion, it appears. Like he's there and has been there for a while now. I feel for him. Like I think about it all the time too. And I'm not trying to come across as like some like empath or anything like that. Like I don't even necessarily believe in that. I mean, I am like a bleeding heart liberal, but I don't believe that I can literally feel what the other person's feeling and all that, like psychobabble, like sun, the moon, the stars, and crystals type BS or whatever. But yeah, I definitely like feel for him, and I'm right there. I'm on the precipice of essentially the same situation. Like I can feel it slipping even further than it's already slipped in. One was more of like an obvious decision. I kind of wish I had the luxury of that same decision, but in a lot of ways I look back, I obviously something I think about and vacillate over a lot, and I'm like, damn, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. Time waits for no man. It doesn't even feel like it's been 3 years, but it's been basically 3 years. And you look back at certain things and probably should have gone for broke, and just, even though I didn't necessarily even have the funds like that, just move to Jersey, or a bunch of other things that I could have done. That's like, I won't say the least of it, but there's like 5 other data points that I could have changed. They appear more obvious now than they were then. There were some communication issues in a lot of ways, but in any event, in life, a lot of times, oftentimes, there's no do-over, so you just kind of live with it. And I'm like, damn, I'm legit staring, some version of like oblivion in the face, right? Where you just, everyone's just kind of gone on with their life, and you just kind of drift away and like are forgotten, and drift into like relative obscurity, and like in a lot of ways like relative failure. If I'm not really on my P's and Q's and don't really fight, which I am, whether it's like professionally or with like law school, whatever, to the teeth, and just get really motivated and make sure that this situation hits and it at least channels into something positive and worthwhile. It could be just like a total wipeout in a lot of ways. But in any event, for the last 3 years, I mean, this has always been an important date to me. Like, again, you know, from pretty much from the get-go, she's been, you know, exceedingly important to me. But obviously, in the 3 years since, this has become essentially like a personal holiday. And couldn't sleep a wink last night. Could not sleep a wink. You know, almost like talking to a patient in a coma, right? They're not going to respond to you, but you know, and you know what I'm talking about, like, you know, sending a happy birthday text or whatever. You're not going to get a response, but you know that they can hear you, in a sense. And you know, you just kind of, you know, you stay prayed up, and you know, do the best you can. But yeah, that's that. So a crazy week, from drug trafficking to holidays, if you will, to my dear ancestral land, you know, ravaged by a force of nature, act of God, if you will. But yeah, that's that. 26 minutes, basically, tidy enough. I thought it would be long, and it was, but not as long as it could have been. I'm about to go into the shop, and this will probably be a filing night, but it's like very dense. It's going to be like a couple hours of filing these baskets back, you know, these like essentially out of network doctor files that I got to file, unless there's like mass health glasses to neutralize or make or whatever. But anyway, the Lord is faithful. Stay with me. God bless. Oh, before I finish, I don't know if this necessarily adds anything to anything, but I guess it's worth mentioning. So I was talking a bit today to my church sister, who I've known as long as I've been in Springfield, so 33 years. And we have like a Give Lively, which is like our, you know, donation service for is he waiting for me? Yeah, I think he is. It's my colleague over there. It's our, you know, tithe and offering, like donation service. But for whatever reason, I don't know, I don't interface well with the software, like my phone or whatever, and it jams on me. So I call my church sister. It's like an excuse for me to talk to her anyway. And you know, we're like legitimately friends. And you know, I was talking about this a little bit today, and you know, of course, she was like, you know, kind of give up the ghost or whatever, blah 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 blah, whatever. But you know, I always ask her, like, you know, just, you know, pray for me both in school and, you know, for restoration. And I appreciate talking to her. She's patient with me. Of course, she's like an elementary school teacher, so yeah, patience would be a forte of hers. And I'm quite patient too. I have the patience of Job, if you haven't noticed. You probably already knew that though. But anyway, the Lord is faithful. Stay with me. God bless. There's a shop right there.